Hey, Dr. Anderson here. Hope you're doing well out there. It's finals time, and I've been asked to do this a few more times to talk about some of my records and some of the things I like. And last week I talked about comedy, and I thought, well, maybe I'll talk about comedy this week because a friend of mine gave me his Steve Martin records. Now I have the Steve Martin records. I have all of them, and I thought, well, I'll accept them, and I'm probably going to give them to somebody else because they're great records. But the first thing I did was not look at the quality record. In fact, what I did was I opened up this one. This was the last Steve Martin record to sell quite a bit. He did a record after this. It was Steve Martin Brothers. But he did a record. This record, "Comedy Is Not Pretty," went gold, and before it, it he'd had a double platinum release with. Actually, it was with Wild and Crazy Guy. "Let's Get Small" only sold 1 million records. um, Anyways, what's fascinating about these records is this one came out in '79, and I'm going to talk more about these records in particular next time. But I went to look to see if they had the original sleeve and something else. And this one had the original sleeve, and as you'll see, the original sleeve literally references "Let's Get Small." Okay, so you pull out the original sleeve and think, okay, that's interesting, but it didn't have what I was really looking for. And what I was really looking for was in my other record that I have of it. I was looking for this. Let's see if I can find it. The poster. And that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about these things you find in records and things that records have that you just don't get on Spotify, and you never really got on CD. They had a life of their own. And this poster is not unique in a lot of these records. Finding a poster in a record is not unique. In fact, a lot of extra textual information, as we say, is in these records, and it begins many years ago. And I just sort of want to go back. Finding the real beginning of when this started to happen is not my specialty, but I have been looking for years to see. And amongst the things I think are interesting are little explanations, and you find these in jazz sleeves, a lot of jazz sleeves where they'll talk about the musicians. They might have hired a writer like Nat Hintoff was famous for writing, or Leonard Feather would do these exquisite notes. But these notes were very common in records, like "Please Please Me" by the Beatles. By the way, my favorite Beatles record. I love the Beatles, but this one's my favorite. Um, and what I like about it is in the back here, one of the things, I mean, I love the record, I love the music, but just these little notes back here telling you about the Beatles, and that you're going, who the Beatles are and where they come from, and as you'll see here, what their songs mean, and how they're influenced by acts like the Shadows, or or uh, or not influenced, but as exciting as the Shadows, and what this album includes, and why it has all these records, why it has the records it has, and things like that. And even in the U.S., that this was released primarily in the U.K. You couldn't get this in the U.S. unless you imported it for many years. It wasn't released in the U.S., I think, as its own until it was released on CD in the 1980s. The official release that you got in the U.S. was actually, well, there was a couple of them. There's the VJ sessions, which I have a copy of, but the one that most people point to is "Meet the Beatles." And "Meet the Beatles," what I love about "Meet the Beatles" is, again, they're introducing you. Now remember, this is happening before people have access to these guys. There's only 3 networks. There isn't a ton of information out there. There's no internet. There isn't any MTV. Finding out about the Beatles, well, you buy the album, and it's a text in itself. And this kind of thing is these kinds of texts and these kinds of statistics I find are really fascinating. If you look at other records within this domain, you'll find that other groups uh, have a certain they tend to do these sorts of things where they're introducing each other. For example, in "Meet the Monkees," right, which many case it's kind of a Beatles knockoff. I love the Monkees, by the way. Not dismissing the Monkees, but in many ways, a kind of Beatles knockoff for young men in a quartet. The flip side would have Stats. And this is not uncommon. You'll find this in a lot of records where young men and they'll have their names, their height, that plays guitars. In other areas, they might, other albums by other quartets, they might list their favorite singers. I remember seeing one for the Beatles where John Lennon talked about his favorite group being the Shirelles. I was trying to find it earlier today, but I couldn't find it. I'll have to dig that out. But back to the Beatles. The Beatles eventually realize you know enough about them, and they're going to give you an experience as rock press grows, as more popular music press grows, you know enough about the Beatles. You've been able to read them, and you'll get a new experience. The most classic one would be Sgt. Pepper's, which comes in a gatefold sleeve. Yet again, something that you can't really get in the CD format. Now, when the CD was re-released, you could open it up and get a gatefold sleeve very small, and it even had a little bit of cutouts. This particular album actually came with a cardboard sheet that you could cut out and position your Sergeant Pepper and a couple instruments and the like. It was something that was tactile. You had proximity to it, and this was your connection. It was a direct, fundamental connection. You also had the lyrics right here. Um, the album they released after this, titled The Beatles, but you know it as the White Album, is probably one of the most talked about albums of all time. I don't know if you can see it. It's released, it has an embossed The Beatles right here. It's embossed in a unique number. There's a website actually dedicated to nothing but white albums called We Buy White Albums. Worth checking out. Just Google We Buy White Albums and you'll see what I say. Now, this record actually came with 4 photos, which when they re-released the 50th anniversary of the White Album a couple years ago, in 2019, was it 2000? No, 2018. A lot of these photos, you could buy the record and the reissues, and they came with the photos. Um, but I was lucky enough; I never got the photos. This copy actually came with the poster, and this poster is not really in great condition. But this poster is a poster of the band, right? See the band here and all these albums, and on the back side the lyrics to every song. So imagine you buy this for the first time. There is no MTV. Getting a good quality picture of the Beatles is hard. It's not easy to just get these things. You don't download them. You could buy them, or you just buy this record and you get 4 photos of your favorite Beatles and all the lyrics. You open it up, you start playing it, and you just read it. You go through the whole thing. I was very lucky to found that. I think I found that for like $3 years ago. Um, I've been collecting records for what 35 years now, 37 years now, and I want to give you a couple more examples of this weird stuff that you can find in records if you're lucky. Now, as vinyl has come back and it's become more collectible, a lot of the stuff got bought out. Great thing if you were buying records and vinyl at all in the late 90s throughout I'd say about 2008, 2009, you could find a lot of this stuff cheap, and that's what I did. This one's I got for $2.99 at a local thrift store. Jethro Tull's Stand Up. I'm an okay Jethro Tull fan, but the reason I bought this is it's called Stand Up. Watch this. It's a pop-up in the middle of the record. That's some parts work there. That's some investment. That's some design, and I just got a kick out of that. When I saw that, I was like, yes, I've got to show this off. Here's perhaps my favorite find and one of my favorite records. So, Pink Floyd's Dark Side of the Moon. I don't need to talk about Dark Side of the Moon so much. It's a very important record. What most people don't realize is that when the record was released, it didn't come with just one poster. Oh no. It didn't come with just 2 posters. It came with 2 stickers. I've got them both. And 2 posters. That's right, a poster of the band. And these are in pretty good condition. I got this, by the way, for I think about $2, the whole thing. Somebody got rid of it. The record's not in bad condition either, but I would have bought it just for the poster. So you get a poster of the band that I just showed you, and let's get trippy here, a green jade poster of the Pyramids. Ooh, very cool. And it literally echoes the very, very famous cover of the Prism with a light going through it. So I remember finding this and bringing this home to my wife and just thinking, "Oh my God, I can't believe I got this." One last one because I think it's probably the most excessive example of this that I can think of, and it's coming from one of the most excessive artists of all time. His name is synonymous with excess, and that's Elton John. So, Captain Fantastic and the Brown Dirt Cowboy. This is one of my wife's favorite records. This and Goodbye Yellow Brick Road. So I went out and I found a copy for $9 for her. This is a few years ago, probably about 10 years ago, and it was outstanding because it came with all the stuff. And the original package had the poster, so that you could hang that up on your wall. You got that, and not one, but two books. The first book was the lyrics. You open it up and you go through the lyrics of Bernie Taupin and Elton John, and it comes with pictures and photos. This is a visual experience. This is not just listening to a record. In fact, it's never just listening to a record in popular culture. There's all this other stuff that's part of popular culture and popular music that we all forget. And today it might be Spotify, it might be visualizations, it might be watching videos, but it's not ever just the music. All right, so I said that there's more than one. Here's the scrapbook. There's literally scraps. It's pictures of Elton John and his band, and clippings. And then back here, a comic. That's right, it's a comic of Elton John. But here's my favorite thing in the record. Okay, a lot of people have read this. You can read about these things on Wikipedia. But this is my favorite thing. It's the Elton John shirt, poster, and concert book order form. And you get a great picture there, Elton. And if you flip it over, you can join the fan club. Right? It's all this stuff that, like, when you start thinking about listening to music, many people think, well, it's just about the music. It's never just about the music. If you were an Elton John fan in the 70s and you had this was part of your experience. And that's one of the many reasons I love researching this music, is because it researching this popular music, because I'm interested in albums. I'm interested in the media and how that informs the experience. And it's why I collect them. It's why I keep them. And when people say, "Why don't you just get rid of them all and go on to Spotify?" I'm like, "What? And get rid of all the records that have posters and stickers and comics? No way." Anyways, I just wanted to give you an example of this stuff, and I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did, just pulling this out and looking at it. You have a great day, a great week. If you're graduating, I hope you're gonna do great. I hope you'll come back to ODU for a ceremony. That would be awesome. I would love to see all of you again, and I hope you're all feeling well, your families are well, and most importantly, you're all healthy. Okay? So stay safe out there. Remember, we're social distancing so that the people who can take care of us stay healthy. We protect them by staying away. You take care. Love y'all. Goodbye.